On May 14th, in 2008, in Minnesota, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson was on his way home from a party at a friend's house to celebrate the end of the spring break semester. But after crashing his car into a ditch, he called his parents for help. Unable to locate his exact whereabouts, he stayed on the phone with them, and he walked toward these distant lights, which he presumed to be the town of Lynd. And as he walked across this field, he shouted, "Oh shit," into the phone before the line went dead. And his parents tried calling him, but after that, he was unreachable. Brandon's car was recovered the next day by police, close to the town of Porter. That's 15 miles from the spot he told his parents he thought he was in. And despite extensive searches involving dogs and hundreds of volunteers, no trace of Brandon was ever found. This account that you're about to hear was told to a Bizarre Occurrences website by a young woman named Kay. She claims that Brandon is still alive, that he is stuck in a nowhere place during a nowhere time, and she knows this because she was stuck there too. The horrors that creep into this world often go unnoticed by the naked eye, but they're still there. They're just in the shadow. They're waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I didn't always get everything right, but underneath all this shine, this front, I'm a good person. At least I think I am. No, I know I am. It's hard to know what was then and what is now anymore. Sometimes the two blur together. They're glued together with my own damn regrets. I shouldn't have driven my car back from that party. I didn't plan on drinking there, but then I got caught up in the moment. I'd worked hard and I wanted to send out the semester in style. And I had a couple of beers. And although I was not wasted, I still should have stayed on my friend's couch. Oh man, how I wish I stayed on the damn couch. But I didn't. Instead, I got into my car and I started driving home, sticking to the rural rounds to avoid the highways so there was less of a chance of me getting stopped by the cop. The field seemed to span on forever, and it was hard to see where the roads ended and the fences began. One moment I was driving, and the next, bam, I drove straight into a ditch, and I was stuck. I was as stuck as they come. In panic, thinking that my parents were definitely going to kill me. I thought about ringing my friends for help, but knowing that the mess that they were in when I left, I knew they would be useless. So I had one choice, and that was to call my parents for help. And at first, they were so annoyed with me for waking them up at whatever ungodly hour it was. But then their anger, it soon turned to concern, and they told me that they would come and get me, that they just needed to know my location. So I climbed out of the car, and I looked around for a road sign or something, and then I saw a light in the far-off distance. I figured it was Lynd, the town I'd just come from. And I explained the route that I thought I'd taken, and I came to an estimate on where I must be. And they told me they were coming now, and to stay on the line. The time ticked by, and there was no sign of them. And they said they were on the back roads from Lynd, but they couldn't see me anywhere. The line kept on crackling and cutting off, and then when it did, I would call them back, or they called me. And then this just carried on and on until I looked at those distant lights, and I just said to them, "Look, I see Lynd. Okay, and it's a few miles out, and I'm just gonna walk there. So head there, okay?" And Dad replied, "Brandon, you gotta stay where you are. Don't go wandering off in the night. You just stay where you are, and we'll find you." I was 19, so of course I ignored his advice. I checked if I had my wallet and my car keys, and then I just headed toward those lights in the distance. I only had my phone light to guide the way, and the ground, it was very uneven. I must have tripped and almost busted my ankle at least 20 times. I thought going off the road would be easier. So I climbed a gate and I headed across the field. And I walked and I walked. But those lights, they seemed to always stay in the same spot. It was as though they were always just out of reach. It didn't matter how much I walked. It felt like this whole thing was pointless. And although I never dreamed of telling him as much, I regretted not listening to my dad. The line was so bad, and Mom and Dad's voices crackled and they were distorted. And then as the line went quiet, I heard something. This scurrying, chewing sound. It was like a mouse, but louder, much louder. And it was coming from ahead of me. Somewhere beyond the grass, but it also seemed to scratch inside of my head. I frantically shone my phone light around me, but I couldn't see anything. I could just hear it. And I knew something was wrong, but I tried just to stay as calm as I could. I didn't want to freak my parents out even more. The line was so bad. I only caught parts of what they were even saying. I tried talking to them, but we couldn't really hear each other properly. And then as I pulled the phone away from my ear, that's when I really heard it. Silence. The scurrying sounds had stopped, and I knew it in my gut that it's silent like that. I mean, it only means one thing. Something bad is about to happen. I shone my light around me, trying to find the source, but little did I know that I was looking in the wrong place. The danger wasn't in front of me, it was beneath me. The clawed hands burst out of the grass and grabbed my ankles with such surprise. The only words I managed to splutter out were, "Oh shit." I dropped my phone as I fell face first into the grass, but I didn't stop falling. That thing still had a hold of me. Its claws were embedding themselves within my skin. I grabbed at the grass, but then I was falling. I was falling to nowhere. I don't know how long I was falling like that for. It felt like both an eternity, but also an instant. When I woke up, I was right there, in the field, only it was daylight. I tried to make sense of what had happened, but nothing made sense about it. I looked at my ankles, and it was the freakiest thing. I had scars right there, right where the clawed hands had grabbed me, but they weren't fresh. They were pale lines, as if they had been made months ago. I checked my pockets. I had my wallet and my car keys on me, but I couldn't find my phone. I searched the field for it, but I already knew my heart, it was gone. And then there was more weirdness. The sky, the clouds weren't moving in it. They were completely still. I don't even know how long it was before I figured that out, but I did. I wish I hadn't. And I just walked and I headed toward what I thought was Lynd, but I couldn't see the lights anymore. All I saw was just green, fields and fields of it, leading to more green and more dirt roads that led back to green. I walked, but my legs never gave way. I thought about water, I thought about food, but I didn't yearn for it. I thought of sleep, but I didn't need it. So I just walked. I walked and walked and walked, and the clouds never moved, and the branches, they never even swayed. Day not shifting to night, I thought I was going mad. And this madness was as confusing as the faded scars on my ankles. Something had grabbed me in that field, and then my world changed. I thought I was dead, and that this was purgatory. Did I need to do something? Did I need to prove myself to be able to leave? I can't even tell you how many times that I just screamed for a sign, to be shown something, to be told what I needed to do to get out of this constant nothing. So then I retraced my steps the best I could, but I never found my car. This place, it didn't have as much as a squirrel or a fly in it. The only life was me, just me. At least that was until something different happened. The sky fell dark without any warning, a pitch black darkness. I couldn't see a thing. I just stood there in the field. I was too afraid to move, and then the darkness was everywhere. And then suddenly, the scurrying, chewing, gnawing sounds were there too, and they echoed around me, and I just stayed as still as I could, but I feared that my thudding heart and my trembling legs would be a dead giveaway. And at that moment, even in horror, I remember feeling relieved that I still felt a heartbeat, that I was still capable of feeling something. That thought made me laugh. It was laughter that came out in this unstoppable burst, and it filled the air. I clasped my hands over my mouth, but it was too late. The scurrying sounds had stopped. Silence. All there was just the deadly silence. And I just stood there, listening to my heartbeat and reminding myself that I was still somewhere. And in this somewhere, I was still alive. And then the claws burst out of the grass, and it wasn't just one pair this time, but dozens of them, too many to comprehend. In the darkness, they grabbed my feet, and they pulled at my legs. They were clawing. A silent clawing, it shredded my skin, caused a surge of pain, and suddenly, I found myself being pulled up to my knees, and the clawed hands grabbing at me, tearing at my shirt, and skin, everything. I tried hitting them off me, but then they just grabbed my hands. They held me in place. I couldn't wriggle free. I felt their claws digging into my skin. I smelt my own blood, but I was helpless. There was nothing I could do. I thought I was going to die like that. Or worse, that it would just go on forever. And I don't even know when daylight appeared, as it was dark and then it wasn't. And I just sat there, crying at the horror that I just endured. The clawed hands had gone, the flat grass showing no signs that they'd ever even been there. But my body showed the sign. Encrusted blood and fading scars covered most of my body. I felt a dull aching, but I soon became used to it. I straightened my glasses as I looked up at these unmoving clouds. And then I did the only thing I could do. I staggered across the endless field and across the deserted dirt roads. Time, it seemed as stuck as I was, and it just went on and on and on. And then, through the daylight would come the darkness, and in this the clawed hands always found me. And I tried staying on the roads, certain that the clawed hands wouldn't be able to burst through the hard ground. And when the darkness arrived, and then as the scurrying sounds turned to silence, and then I felt sharp claws dig into my feet, I knew the type of ground didn't matter. It didn't stop. Nothing stopped them. By daylight, the scars had faded, and the blood a crusted, flaky reminder of the horror that I was living in. On and on and on. On. Daylight lasted far longer than the bursts of night, but always that fear that the night would come, and with it, so would they. And then one day, out of nowhere, there she was, this young woman, similar age to me. I spotted her by the road, walking around looking dazed and confused and shouting for help. I hid from her at first, unbelieving she could possibly be real. And when I finally decided to approach her, I saw the fear reflected in her eyes, and she charged at me with a branch, and I did not stop her. When she finally stopped hitting me and she stepped back, she saw me lying in the heap and just laughing. I didn't care about the pain. All I cared about was that even if I was going mad and imagining her, at least I wasn't alone. So then we started talking, and she told me that her name was Kay. She'd been out walking her dog across the dirt roads near Porter, and then the dog got spooked and ran off into the fields, so she chased after him, and she searched until she realized that she was lost. And then the night fell, and she heard those scurrying sounds, and then clawed hands burst out of the ground and took her, just like it taken me. She asked me what my name was, and I told her, and then I saw a realization in her eyes. She knew my name. She knew I was missing. I knew she was hiding something from me, so I begged her to tell me. Oh man, I begged for her just to spit it out. And just like that, she did. She said, "Brandon, you went missing in what, 2008? It isn't that year anymore. It's 2022. That didn't make any sense. How could I be missing for 14 years, but not have eaten or drunk a thing in all that time? How could I have not aged or slept? How could there be more days than night?" I cried into her arms, not wanting to let go of her. She was real, and I wasn't alone anymore. I can't tell you how that felt. I wouldn't wish this doomed place on anyone, yet there was just this part of me that was so relieved that she found her way here, that I was just no longer alone. I told her my story, and she told me hers, and then we walked. And we walked, waiting for that moment. The sky turned black and the clawed hands came. Only it didn't darken, not for a long, long time. But I knew it would happen eventually. I felt it in my gut. I told Kay this, and she looked like she believed me. She ran over to a tree with an abundance of unmoving leaves, an American elm, I think. And she began climbing, and she helped me climb too. And we perched on those branches and we just stared. We stared out into this world of endless fields and dirt paths, and we stayed silent like that. I don't know how long, but it was a comfortable silence in this nightmare world. And then it was in a blink of an eye, the sky turned pitch black and the scurrying sounds echoed around us. The gnawing, scurrying, baying for our blood. I heard her call my name through her panic breathing, and I felt around in the darkness for her, and I found her hand. The scurrying grew louder. The intensity of it was booming off the tree trunk, gnawing. It sounded like whatever it was gnawing through my head. But I just squeezed Kay's hand, and I reassured her that the clawed hands wouldn't get us up here. Words I didn't believe. She leaned into me, and I held her tightly, and I kept holding on to her. As the sound stopped and the silence came, I heard the clawed hands burst out of the branches around us, their sharp nails shredding my skin. I heard her shrieks, and I felt her flinch. I tried to knock them away from her, away from me, but I couldn't see what I was doing. All I could do was just squeeze her hand. Her nails dug into me. They were sharp and unforgiving as they held me. And then I knew it wasn't her hand at all. It was one of those things. So I screamed out to her, telling her I couldn't feel her hand. And then she called back, "Brandon, I've lost you. Where are you? I told her to be strong, that it would all be over soon, and I told her this until I couldn't sense her anymore. And as the claws marked my skin, I knew that there was a worse fear in this unknown world. I knew by the time the still clouds returned, I would be alone once again. In July 2023, 11 months after Kay claims to have disappeared, she reappeared in a field close to Lynd without Brandon. She saw lights in the distance and she walked toward them, eventually reaching the town center. With no family and only a few friends, the reports of her going missing was kept very low-key. It took Kay a long time to piece together what happened, and she still found that there were so many unexplainable gaps. But those faded scars on her body were proof to her that what had happened was real. And eventually, Kay did contact the Bizarre Occurrences website and told them about Brandon, the young man who had been a friend when she had found herself in a nowhere place. And to this day, Brandon Swanson is still a reported missing person, and his case is one of the 90,000 unsolved missing person cases in America right now. But what do you think happened to Brandon? This is a real story based on a real person, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his family. But where do you think Brandon is right now? What did you think of this story? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. And for more scary horror stories, please subscribe.